Thank you for joining us for this look at some of the best stories from KPBS News this week. I'm Jade Hindman. Coming up, the election cycle is reaching its peak. KPBS talks with Voice of San Diego's Scott Lewis about some of the high-profile campaigns. Celebrating life in Sherman Heights, for 30 years, the community has honored Dia de los Muertos. See how this year's altar is taking shape. And reducing greenhouse gases from livestock. See how lab-grown seaweed might help reduce emissions. We start with the growing challenge of getting home insurance in parts of California. Some homeowners are now buying policies from out-of-state carriers who are not licensed to do business here. KPBS reporter Tanya Thorne explains how that comes with a risk.
When Pete Alexakis moved to Fallbrook 11 years ago, there was a hook that got him.
There was an advertisement about Fallbrook being one of the last areas where you could buy a little bit of land and be close to the ocean.
His home is surrounded by green rolling hills and trees. To him and his family, beautiful views. But for insurance companies, extreme fire hazard.
11 years ago, we had choices, so we were able to get from one of the Berkshire Hathaway companies a preferred homeowner's policy with, full coverage and good rates.
But in December, he got a non-renewal notice from his insurer. The company said it was because of the fire danger. He was forced to join California's FAIR plan for basic fire coverage only. For coverage in other areas, he got an additional policy from a separate company.
And the impact was profound. We couldn't, if we were going to try and compare apples for apples with coverages that we had before, it would have been probably an 80% increase in cost. So what we did was we offset some of that expense by going, tremendously higher with deductibles and foregoing some other coverages just to make it affordable, frankly.
He's not alone. Insurers like State Farm and Allstate have been offloading their California clients. And while officials in Sacramento tried to reach a compromise with the insurance agencies, homeowners are left with limited options.
Well, it just depends on every individual client and their family and their financial needs. So that really varies. But the higher of a deductible you have, the lower your premium is going to be.
Ashley Beyer-Walasek is an insurance broker in Fallbrook. For fire coverage, she says most homeowners are going with the California FAIR plan and then filling in coverage gaps with other policies for things like water, theft, or liability. There's another option, known as non-admitted policies. These come from out-of-state companies that aren't licensed to do business in California.
What that means is they are not held to the same regulatory financial stability laws that we have here. But they're also able to kind of insure riskier ventures, or whether it be a fire area or if it's a commercial policy.
She says non-admitted carriers can be a good option for homeowners in fire risk areas, but there could be another risk.
If the company becomes insolvent or goes bankrupt and they are not able to pay out the claims that you're paying the coverage for, you are not able to, as a California resident, to go to the state to either appeal or, kind of fight back to help get any help from the state.
But she says many non-admitted carriers have good financial stability and insurance ratings. It all comes down to doing the research for the coverage and price a homeowner wants and can afford.
People who have fixed incomes, it's very difficult to then see their premium, triple in a year, and their incomes aren't increasing.
Homeowners are having to make tough decisions.
I can't believe that an insurance policy and not being able to afford it is dictating your moves in life. So
uninsured or underinsured, and others are choosing to sell their home and move out of California. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
Tuesday will be 2 weeks from the November 5th election. It's also the deadline to register to vote. Some are already making their decisions and mailing in their ballots. Our Public Matters partner, Scott Lewis from Voice of San Diego, joined KPBS's Amitha Sharma to talk about some of the high-profile races.
Scott, on election election night when the polls close, the results are coming in. What race will you scroll down to first?
The first one I will look at is the county supervisor's race, District 3. Incumbent Tara Lawson-Remer, a Democrat, is trying to hold her seat against the Republican challenger, Kevin Faulconer, former mayor of San Diego. Everybody's watching that. Millions of dollars are flowing into that race. It's going to be a real nail biter, I think, and everybody's really interested because there's so much at stake, especially for housing, homelessness, how the county's going to go forward. The other one that I'm really interested in, I'm obsessed with it. I think I might be the only one in the state, but that's Prop 5. I think it'll be really close, 50-50, and it'll have a big impact on cities and counties going forward, whether they can raise property taxes to build stuff.
So let's talk about that District 3 county race a little bit. You had been on the program recently and you had said linking a candidate to Trump is showing that it could hurt the candidate's chances. Talk to me a little bit more about that.
Well, several years ago, 2018, Lori Zaff was running for re-election as a city councilwoman in a district. She had no scandals, no big problems. People seemed to appreciate her leadership. She lost by 15 points by the most tenuous connections that Labor and Democrats were able to make between her and Trump. Kevin Faulconer, on the other hand, has pretty strong connections. He endorsed him. He went to the Oval Office, that sort of notorious photo. And I think it's been a very powerful point that the Democrats have made, and they've been on TV during the Padres playoff games. They've been all over the mail with this sign of he stood with Trump, and billboards too. And that's their main case. Is like the outside groups are putting about $2 million in, but about three-quarters of it is supporting Kevin Faulconer. The rest is going to say, like, Kevin Faulconer stood with Trump, and that's their theory, is that it would sink him no matter how good his attacks on Tara Lawson-Remer are.
If by chance Faulconer wins against Tara Lawson-Remer, how might that victory impact San Diego County as a whole?
I think the biggest area it'll impact immediately is housing in the unincorporated areas of San Diego County. There's a general plan in place for where you can build housing, thousands and thousands of units. Tara Lawson-Remer and the Democratic majority of the county right now are really putting constraints on that housing. And Kevin Faulconer wants to let those be built in those areas that are planned under the general plan. Those are thousands of units and would make a big deal, and that's why so many builders are involved in the race right now.
Let's turn our attention to the San Diego mayor's race. There has been a lot of money thrown into that race recently. There's the $1 million that was given by the Lincoln Club. Much of that is going to be spent on challenger Larry Turner. Yeah. There's another $300,000 from PACs supporting Mayor Todd Gloria, the incumbent. What does that say about that race right now? Well,
that's about what you would need to make the case for any candidacy for mayor. You have to have enough money to run for mayor, and you have to make the case that A, the incumbent has to go, that they need to lose their job, and B, that you're the one that deserves to replace them. And that second part was really where Larry Turner was struggling, because nobody or very few people knew who he was. That $1 million coming in from an outside group to support him, to put ads all over YouTube and such, should help him get his name recognition up. Now, the problem is we've already had 2 weeks of voting, and people have already made their choices, and every hour that goes by that he doesn't change people's minds is an hour that benefits the incumbent.
There is also a contentious council race in Chula Vista. The effort to replace Andrea Cardenas, who pleaded guilty to 2 counts of felony grand theft. What's been going on there?
Well, there's 2 candidates, Rudy Ramirez, who's been on the Chula Vista City Council before, and Cesar Fernandez. They're going at it. It's kind of this old South Bay alliance with the newer one that's there. They're always going, it's Democratic, but they're always going at each other. And they're trading just awful accusations back and forth. Cesar Fernandez accuses Rudy Ramirez of not paying taxes, of not treating his employees well. Rudy Ramirez accuses Fernandez of a DUI, and there's a recall effort for him. He's on the Chula Vista Elementary School Board. So it's a really negative campaign. But I think it represents that sort of, not old guard as in like older people, but just an establishment, more conservative versus this sort of growing, more progressive group that's trying to take control of the Chula Vista City Council.
Thank you, Scott, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
To get more information on all of the local measures on your ballot, check out the KPBS Voter Hub at kpbs.org. This next story is one of our most read right now at kpbs.org. San Diego's City Council this week passed a code of conduct for the city's boards and commissions. KPBS Scott Rodd says the council rejected a more restrictive set of rules put forward by the mayor's office.
The city of San Diego has dozens of boards and commissions made up of volunteer members. They provide guidance on a range of topics, from policing to housing to historical buildings. The new code of conduct promotes being respectful and professional. Mayor Todd Gloria's office drafted the code of conduct and originally pushed for more restrictions on board members. The initial proposal would have prohibited members from publicly criticizing any city employees, including elected leaders. The mayor's office also wanted to have prior review of board members' communications with the press. The city council struck down both of these proposals following reporting by KPBS. Here's Council President Sean Elo Rivera.
We definitely heard from enough folks who participate on boards and commissions that they were fearful that they were going to not be able to express their opinions.
The amendments came as a relief to Kelly Linden. She serves on San Diego's Climate Advisory Board.
I think it strikes a good balance between, setting expectations for those who are serving on boards and commissions, with still allowing the freedom to engage as they need to with city staff, the media, and the public.
Boards and commissions are expected to self-enforce the new code of conduct. Scott Rodd, KPBS News.
Well, the San Diego Union High School District is taking a closer look at its school foundations and how they manage their money. The audit is in response to a report done by students. They claim one foundation was mismanaging funds raised by student clubs. Foundation leaders told Alexander Wynn they've got nothing to hide.
Vast majority of our community trusts what we do. And that is to make sure that every kid at this school every day has an enriching environment.
Yvette Roberts and Sandra Sinsek are members of the Canyon Crest Academy Foundation Board. They are giving me a tour of the school's robotics lab. They say donations from parents paid for this lab and the equipment here.
Examples would be like the CNC machine, AP biology supplies. We've also got day classes and STEM day classes, and also the machine learning kits and cables. They all benefit from that.
Last month, 2 Canyon Crest students published a report saying the foundation charges student clubs significantly higher fees for donations than similar foundations at other schools. They say CCAF charges 25%, while other school foundations charge between 5 to 10%. Roberts says the 25% is not a fee, but a reallocation to the general fund for each program. The foundation says this is how they can fund big-ticket items.
If another school chooses 10%, that must work for their foundation. For us, let's say we do need a new gym floor, it's going to take time for that, right? But if the 25% comes in, we can fund it.
The 25% is very transparent. It is everywhere. It's on the website. It was in orientation meetings. It was in program materials.
Christy Grover is a parent at CCA and a nonprofit executive with 25 years in the industry. She says all students benefit from that 25%.
In the case of robotics, they needed additional fencing to help with their robots and try things out. Also, a 3D printer is something they were able to get. But really, it's based on need within the program scope.
Kevin Wang and Latong Tien are students who wrote the report. They say the benefits do not justify what they say are high fees.
If you look at Torrey Pines, for example, they charge under 10%. I think 5 or slightly above that, but under 10 at Torrey Pines, a third of what we charge. Their robotics team is very comparable to ours. They've scored better than us many times in the past few years.
They allege that some of the money went toward executive pay and undefined expenses. After the students' report was published last month, the district announced it would audit all school foundations. Sinsek is confident the audit will show nothing unusual.
We're looking forward to sharing that information with our constituents and our families and our donors.
The students say they're willing to accept the results of the audit, whatever it may be, if it's done in a transparent manner. In Carmel Valley, Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
Well, another way to find KPBS content is on our YouTube page. Subscribe and get notified when new items are posted. You'll find a mix of our news, podcasts, and locally produced shows there. It's also where we live stream KPBS Evening Edition, weeknights at 5. And sign up for our newsletters to get a list of our most popular stories. Here are some from this week. One of them you saw at the start of this newscast: California homeowners weigh options in a limited insurance market. Chula Vista rejects more ADUs for single-family homes. That's part of our Public Matters collaboration with iNewsSource. And a settlement is approved in a lawsuit challenging San Diego's vehicle habitation laws. Since 1994, the community in Sherman Heights has come together every year to celebrate and honor loved ones who've passed on for Dia de los Muertos. KPBS video journalist Matt Bowler tells us a look inside this special celebration of life after death.
Every year, for 30 years, the Sherman Heights Community Center is transformed. Calaveras and papel picado show the path inside.
It's about family, it's about tradition, it's about culture, it's about history.
Francisco Soto, programs manager at the community center, says Dia de los Muertos is one of the most important events for him.
The indigenous people of Mexico, and like the Aztecs, the Mayas, they believed that when they passed away, they would go to Mictlan. Mictlan is the underground. So they believed that once it passed away, they would go to the Mictlan, and then they would return every year to see their families. When the Spanish came to the Americas, they infused the culture of the indigenous people as well as the Catholic Church.
94-year-old Anita Lopez helped found the community center. She's not able to speak like she once was, but her daughter brings her here to see the flowers and altars. She's been part of this community since 1972. Lopez has seen many ofrendas dedicated to many people. But the ofrendas, or altars, don't have to be about one specific person. They can be dedicated to a group of people.
La historia de mi vida, violencia doméstica.
Marta Diaz created her ofrenda in honor of all the victims of domestic violence. She shares her story.
Porque me empezó a llenar de amigos nuestra casa, alcohol, cigarros y drogas. Siempre terminaba el fin de semana en la cárcel por violencia doméstica. Eventos grandes, llenos de gritos, golpes, sangre.
The tradition lasts 7 days, with each day dedicated to different people who've passed on. Each ofrenda is unique, but they all include candles representing fire, papel picado representing wind, glasses of water, and the iconic Mexican marigold flower known by their indigenous name, Cempasúchil, representing earth. Each of the 7 days is dedicated to a different group.
We call it Dia de los Angelitos. It's dedicated, which is November 1st, is dedicated for the little babies that passed away.
And then on November 2nd comes the big day,
which is for everyone, which is Dia de los Fieles Difuntos, which is Dia de los Muertos. It's more about love. It's more about honoring the memory of the person.
For Soto, the holiday is about keeping his culture alive.
We keep our traditions. We keep our culture. We try to, keep it alive.
Matthew Bowler, KPBS News.
Well, Sherman Heights Community Center is hosting Day of the Dead events all month long. You can find out more on their website, shermanheightscc.org. And KPBS is organizing a digital community altar where you can share a memory of someone you wish to remember. kpbs.org/Day of the Dead to fill out our form, or use the QR code right there on your screen. Dracula, the infamous bloodsucker of Stoker's Victorian novel, gets a comic transfusion courtesy of the Old Globe. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando goes behind the scenes to speak with the actors bringing the show to life.
Hi, I'm Beth Accomando, and I'm here at the Old Globe Theater to talk about Dracula, a Comedy of Terrors. And I'm going to be speaking with actors George Crissa and Drew Droege. And
I'm so sorry, Beth. Before we start, George, is playing Dracula, and I'm a little worried that he's a little too good. I think he might be turning into a vampire. he's so good, and it's just a lot of things are sort of happening right now, and a lot of hissing and growling. So I just wanted to give you a couple things. This is a steak. You can plunge that into his heart.
Okay.
And I'm going to keep this for me. This is holy water. Just fling that in his general direction. I just, want you to have a good interview.
All right, thank
Let's
you.
have fun.
All right. Well, we're going to go inside and talk to George. Hi, George. George Crissa is exposing audiences to a sexy new version of Dracula.
I am highly desirable.
There's something very seductive about the way that he's been written and the way that he's been played, that he's a lover. It's like, again, kind of seductive that he bites you on the neck. Like how beautiful and vulnerable is that?
But I was talking about the varicose veins in your neck.
My neck? Oh, what a refreshing compliment.
Crissa sinks his teeth into a sexy and funny version of the iconic vampire for Dracula, A Comedy of Terrors, which is not really referencing Bram Stoker's blood-sucking count, but rather our collective pop culture knowledge of vampires.
I think we grew up with some version of Dracula or another. I think my very first one would be the Count from Sesame Street.
I am the Count. Do you know why they call me the Count? Because I love to count things.
Which is probably where I get my accent from.
Good evening! Allow me to introduce myself. I am Count Dracula.
Playing opposite Chris's Dracula is Drew Droege as the Count's nemesis, Dr. Van Helsing.
Hello there, so nice to meet you. You must be Mrs. Van Helsing.
Dr. Van Helsing. I think it is the very first that I know of drag Van Helsing. Happy to be part of that lineage.
I sent for Dr. Jean Van Helsing, as in Jean Valjean.
No, you sent for Dr. Jean Van Helsing, as in Jean Valjean. I never feel like the gender is the joke. A lot of times I play women at, just for the laughs, but in this show there's a lot of like girl power and feminism, and it's a lot of fun.
Part of that fun is tapping into another pop culture reference, Cloris Leachman's Frau Blucher in Young Frankenstein.
What was great in rehearsal is that we absolutely had no dialogue coach whatsoever, and they gave us free rein to just like commit and pick a voice, because again, that's the spirit of the show. It's sort of like, we also, the show is, we're a company of actors who come out and say, on behalf of theater management, we've been asked to issue a friendly warning.
We're about to unfold the story of Dracula.
A bloodthirsty monster who plays God with helpless victims,
draining them of life to extend his own.
The result is a high-energy farce that runs with the precision of a Swiss watch.
This script is verbal farce. One or can ruin the rhythm of the line. You have to really be on top of each other's energy, because otherwise it does go haywire.
The energy is palpable in the Globe's intimate theater in the round, where the audience can be just inches away from the actors.
Well, I think what's really great about doing it in the round is that there's no place to hide. So you have no choice but to be completely invested the entire time. And there's moments when we can really take the audience in and make them a part of it so that we're all kind of in on the same thing.
Chris has been embracing his role as the vampiric Count with a meticulous sense of detail that I have to say is terrifyingly good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And everyone made it out alive. All right. Cows don't live in the sea, but an underwater plant might be key to reducing some of their natural emissions. SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge tells us how a San Diego scientist and an Australian businessman are finding a way to reduce seaweed that nearly eliminates the production of methane in cows' stomachs.
Methane is a greenhouse gas whose production has rocketed due to human activities. It comes from oil and gas drilling and from landfills.
But actually, the largest source of methane on the planet is from the agriculture sector.
And most of that comes from cows. Their stomachs have an enzyme that creates methane as a byproduct of digestion, methane that is burped out by the animals.
And nature's created the beautiful arrangement that this seaweed produces these quite powerful inhibitors that block that enzyme in cows.
The seaweed is called Asparagopsis. The primary active compound in it is called bromoform. Steve Miller and his company want to grow the seaweed in land-based operations that you might compare to fish farms. And to find the best kind of Asparagopsis to grow, Miller's company is getting some help from a marine biologist at Scripps Institution of Oceanography.
Can we find a supremely fast-growing seaweed that also produces a whole bunch of bromoform?
Jen Smith's lab at Scripps Oceanography is growing different kinds of the seaweed in different conditions. Smith is working with Miller's company to optimize the production of the plant. The key is to find the right strain of Asparagopsis for farming.
My lab has the freedom and flexibility to do the research that can help inform the commercialization of this species at scale.
Asparagopsis is not cattle feed. It's an additive that's less than 1% of what the cow eats. Even so, CH4 Global and companies like it would have to be able to make a lot of it at a low enough price to supply the world's cattle farms with a meaningful amount.
Now it's a matter of, can we produce enough to have a global impact to be able to see these methane reductions in our lifetime.
Steve Miller says he's been producing Asparagopsis in tanks, but he says he'll increase efficiency by growing it in saltwater ponds.
Effectively, imagine in front of you was a large swimming pool, but the swimming pool's only a meter deep.
Methane may be a smaller global warming problem than CO2 because there's a lot less of it, but it has 30 times the warming potential. Jen Smith says by feeding the seaweed to cows, we could really start to manage the world's methane problem. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
Well, we hope you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm Jade Hindman. Thanks for joining us. Yeah.